Okay, we're going to go ahead and start a little early, like an hour early, just to make sure that I've got all of moving parts operating because this is my first time doing a podcast by myself. Although I've watched Brian do it quite a few times, kind of like staying at the Holiday Inn Express, I think. So I did a screenshot of someone that I have to share because it's hilarious. And I think that will be part of what we do is just call out stupid people because it's fun. Um, there, well, maybe I didn't screenshot it. There was a person on True Social that has all of the crosses, like I'm a Christian, um, and calling Donald Trump fat and a liar and a rapist and supposedly a Republican that's all in it for Ron DeSantis, which I don't care who you vote for, but it is kind of funny that you have all of these indications in your handle on True Social that you're a Christian, but love to pass judgment and, as the left says, body shame, which is a little ridiculous for a Christian. So, also, um, I wanted to comment on a picture. I don't know if we can see it on here that has all of the elements of green energy, the people working in the mines and strip mines. And this was posted by DC Drano that talks about the devastating risk of transitioning to green energy. Mining for electric powering minerals has left 23 million people exposed to toxic waste. That's right about the same amount that probably were exposed to COVID shots too, maybe more. Um, Says rivers polluted and 16 million acres of farmland ruined, all for green energy. That's on top of someone else posting an article from Zero Hedge that says there's world starvation going on, and India has banned a particular type of white rice from being exported. And it's almost like every day we hear of another country slaughtering livestock, all in the name of green energy. So there does seem to be something weird going on with the timing. It just seems to be happening quicker and quicker of the merging of all of these cabal tracks to, I mean, it feels like there's going to be a head-on collision that happens at some point because you can't keep shrinking the food supply. And that really dovetails into what we're going to be talking about in our book review, what is labeled the strategy of tension that was created by the international syndicate way back in the early 1900s. It's how they set up everything. They set up a yin and a yang, a left and a right on every topic. And what they really want to do is come somewhere in the middle. And by labeling things like the far left and the far right, in their definition, the far right's Nazis, but we went through this quite a few times. Obviously, Nazism, socialism, totalitarianism, communism, are all far left ideologies, whether you're talking about the control of the manufacturing and whether it's a cartel of industrialists pulling the strings or the government offices pulling the strings, you're really splitting hairs at that point. The bottom line is it's all controlled. So it's interesting that they know all of this, obviously, but they have to take a chunk of this and put it over here and fake everybody out that it's a right, and that there's two opposing extremes, and they will inevitably come with a middle solution in order to tell you that, hey, these people over here want to kill you, these people over here want to kill you, but you can trust me. We're going to work right down the middle and we're going to deliver something to you that works. And all you have to do is give up your freedom. And that strategy has been repeated over and over and over again. But when it was happening, we didn't recognize it. But that's because we didn't realize they wanted us all dead either. So, wanted to go through a couple of other things on here. Hold on just a second. Let me pull it up. So, I'd love to do a book review on Kash Patel's new book, The Government Gangsters. Maybe we'll put that on the list too. But with the amount of books that we have to get through, we're going to have to be doing this a lot. Let's see what else we got. Oh, I'd like to know what everybody's thoughts are, and maybe we'll ask this later, about Zelensky asking Marina Brovovich to be the ambassador for Ukraine and to help with the education system there. That's a win-win for everybody. And again, another one of those elements of speed picking up toward whatever end destination we're headed towards. And that's on top of what's happening at the border, because that's outrageous. And again, it just keeps, oh, and we want to give them ID cards? Excuse me? No, we don't. It just keeps intentionally picking up speed. So, also, digital soldier, U.S. Air Force vet. My wife and I went through the McDonald's drive-through window, and I gave the cashier a $5 bill. Our total was $4.25. This has happened so many times. So I also handed her 25 cents. She said, "You gave me too much money." I said, "Yes, I know, but this way you can give me $1 back." She sighed. She sighed and went to get the manager, who asked me to repeat my request. I did so, and he handed me back my 25 cents. You just can't make this up. "We're sorry, but we don't do that kind of thing." The cashier then proceeded to give me 75-cent change. Uh, we're so dumb, so dumb. What's next? Oh, and we had a great conversation today about, well, we were on our trip this summer from Florida to Atlanta to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, all the way up to Maine, across under the Great Lakes up to Michigan. We went up to the Upper Peninsula and came back down and visited family in Indiana. Spent some time in Nashville and met Freda, and went to the Biltmore and back to the Outer Banks to pick up our Camaro and back home. My husband and I both love going into old houses and Um, let's see, it froze up a little bit. Just wanted to stop by and show some love. Thanks for your support. We have been dumbed down on purpose. You're right, awakened warrior. You're absolutely right. And I appreciate the love, by the way. Um, some reason, my browser froze up. Um, let's see if we can get that fixed. Can you still hear me? I want to make sure these are the kinks that I wanted to um, work out before we start the actual book review. Okay, you can hear me. So anyway, what I find fascinating is we like to go into the museums that have turned into mansions. And I don't like to cook myself, but I do find the kitchens fascinating. And when they try to replicate those areas as close to authentic as they can, one of the things that I noticed, and I kept telling my husband, there's an awful lot of copper in here. There's copper cups, there's copper plates, there's copper pans. And unless you actually do some digging, you can't find copper pans anywhere. So I got to looking and finding out that copper is like one of the healthiest things that you can cook in or cook with as far as the utensil pan goes. And that fascinated me. So I really need to go back and look at when we transitioned from copper and healthy pots. I'm going to bet it was probably about the time that all of the Alcoa and the aluminum mobsters got in bed with each other and decided there was too many of us, and they started producing copper plates. Um, excuse me, aluminum utensils, pots, and pans for us to use. And then, if that wasn't bad enough, they coat them with fluoride, Teflon. Teflon has fluoride in it. So we're going to get you the aluminum and the Teflon put together to make sure that all of your food becomes poison. So, yay. So that was one of the things that I noticed on looking through all of those mansions is the kitchens and what they cooked with and how industrious they all were. It was just amazing to me. Let me see if I switch over here to my browser. I also wanted to bring up one of the slides that we're going to use, which is, there's me frozen. This is a slide we're going to be looking at. It's a very interesting slide. Let's see. This is going to cover the first 2 chapters, and I want you to see how busy it is by zooming out first before I zoomed in. This is just the people and organizations in the first 2 chapters of our book. You'll notice that there's kind of a pinwheel around this organization and a pinwheel around this organization. So if we zoom in to this organization, we're going to see that this is the OSS/CIA. And this has all of these people. And what you notice right off the bat is these are all rich people. They all worked for the CIA. And if you think the rich people worked for the CIA back in the day in the early 1900s and they still don't today, you'd be wrong. I also found this family right here, Ryan. I don't know if they're related to Paul Ryan. I couldn't find that link, but I found that very interesting. We'll eventually talk about just about all of these. William Buckley was very interesting. He was very big in the CIA. Um, Also, is that Philip Graham? Yeah. He was the original owner of the Washington Post, the Vanderbilt family. We went to see a bunch of their mansions over the summer, the Breakers and the Marble House in Newport. And then we went to Asheville and seen the Biltmore. They all eat out copper too. You have the House of Morgan, William Colby, who worked for them. He also was a CIA um, um, director. And you have the Mellons, just amazing. And then you have over here, and even the Office of Naval Intelligence did a lot of work with the CIA during World War II at the harbors. Um, so we know that the CIA uses front companies. So you have here some of the front companies, the Civil Air Transport, which interestingly enough has several Air Force people from the original Air Force in the 1947 timeframe working for it as a front to the CIA for drug transportation. And then over here, we end up with, let's zoom out a little bit. We end up with Major General Wild Bill Donovan. He's a very interesting person. And I did a little bit of research. I never even, it's funny that we now all say watch the wives because now we realize that was a big part of everybody's life. So back in the day, especially in the early 1900s, the wives kept all of the social calendars, they held all of the parties. They are the ones that developed the invite list. The wives played a critical role um, in the life of their husbands, in who got associated with who got married to who. Um, just fascinating. And Ruth Rumsey, whose name actually in this book that we're going to talk about, they spelled her name wrong. They had her down as Ruth Ramsey, but when you go looking into Buffalo, New York, which is where that family is from, the Rumsey family. We were there this summer, which turned out to be hilarious because, again, we like driving around looking at old architecture. We drove right by where their family house was, didn't know it. We also found an abandoned railroad station that was as grand as Grand Central Station, either in New York or DC. The place was fascinating. It was huge, it was abandoned, but we read on the sign that a nonprofit had been created to restore it. And I don't know how I get this thing to unfreeze. Florida to Atlanta, to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, all the way up to Maine. Now it's going to go play all of it. Across under the Great Lakes up to Michigan. We went up to the Upper Peninsula and came back down and visited family in Indiana. Can I fast forward this? Yes. Okay. Michigan, we went up to the Upper Peninsula and came back down and visited family in Indiana. Can I fast forward this? Yes. Okay. Can I get we went up to the Upper Peninsula and came back down and visited family in Indiana. Can I fast forward this? Yes. Okay. Can I get we went up. Oh no. Let's see what happened. Peninsula and came back down and visited family in Indiana. Is this just going to recycle every time? Yes. Okay, can I get this? I'm thinking I might have to restart. Oh, no. Let me go leave, go back over to live stream and stop my screen sharing. Is this just going to recycle every time? How can I get this? I'm thinking I might have to restart. I'm getting too fancy for my britches. Opening up multiple pictures. So now it's frozen with my screen open. That doesn't make any sense at all. Darn it. Let me go leave, go back over to live stream and stop my screen sharing. Is this just going to recycle? Oh, I think it's undone now. Yay! I'm thinking I might have to restart. I'm getting too fancy for my britches. Opening up multiple pictures. Okay, let's try this again. So now it's frozen with my screen open. That doesn't make any sense at all. Technology is definitely a pain. You're absolutely right, especially for darn it, me. My daughter taught me just enough to be dangerous. Okay, so I don't even remember where I was at. Let me go leave. Go back over to. I did want to let everyone know that we redid my office here with all of this wonderful artwork on the wall. That I'm thinking obviously this is my shadow box with my life story in it. And I have several of the medals. I'm getting too fancy for my britches. Opening up multiple pictures. And I wanted to point out this one. Let me make sure I can tilt it the right way. Let's try this again. This picture that's right here is an amazing depiction of a guy that flew in Korea and Vietnam and was a multi-technology war, is definitely a pain. You're absolutely right. Ace, especially for darn it, me. And his name was Ralph Parr. My daughter taught me just enough to be dangerous. He was alive. So when I was stationed at Randolph Air Force Base from 2003 to 2005, I did want to, and this guy, let everyone know that we read in this picture right down here. This wonderful, this picture is about that. Is a depiction of a friend of mine who flew my life story missions in Desert Storm. His name's John Reed. His call sign is Beetle. He was a F-15 pilot. That picture was taken of him coming back from a mission that he flew. And it now hangs in UCOM's headquarters over in Europe. And I mean, it's a huge, big piece of art. But the artist that did the picture gave him little prints that he could hand out to friends and family. So of course, depiction I insisted I get of a guy that flew in. Not really. He brought it to me at work. Korea and I was stationed with him and his wife both at the Pentagon and at Randolph, and I absolutely love him to death. Ace, especially for me. So, and also a picture of an F-16 hangs here. That he was one of the was alive. It's not the plane I got a ride in, but when I did get my F-16 ride at that unit. So when I got the ride, the guys gave me this frame picture, and this was really cool. We've in this picture right down here. This wonderful. This picture is about that. So it's a depiction. Yeah, I think it is a friend of mine. Y'all are so dang good. Missions in Desert Storm. His name's John. So Reed, you're hearing the feedback too. Okay, let's see what we can do about that. That picture was taken of him coming back from a mission that he flew, and it now hangs in UCOM's headquarters over in Europe. And I mean, it's a huge, big piece of art. But the artist that did that's right picture gave him little prints that he could hand out to friends and family. So of course, these pictures, I insisted I get of a guy that flew in. Not really. He brought it to me at work. Korea. I was stationed with him and his wife both at the Pentagon and at Randolph, and I absolutely love him to death. Ace, especially for. All right, let me see. I gotta put my glasses on and figure out the buttons down here. Hangs here. That he was one of the was alive. It's not the plane I got a ride in, but when I did get my F-16 ride at that unit. So when I got the ride, the guys gave me this frame picture, and this was really. All right, let's see if that fixed the audio. Okay. All right, let me know if that audio works out good. Where you're only hearing me one time. Did it turn back off again? Okay, great. Whew. Start to panic when I have hiccups because I'm not prepared for hiccups. All right. I appreciate you staying with me, Awakened Warrior. Greatly appreciated. We're going to have Beta join us in just a little bit. Let me see if I can check on her real quick and see if she's there yet. Oh, she is here.
Hi.
Are you there, Beta? Hey.
Getting that I got to take my CIA thing off.
CIA thing. You were so funny.
I'm trying to avoid the deep state.
Okay, so Beta blocks her camera. And so the other night when her and Julie and I were trying this out, she's like, I can't figure out why you can't see me. She's like, oh, I have my camera covered up.
I know it took me a minute. And I'm trying to do it where I don't have to sit and hold this phone. So maybe that'll work. Yeah.
There you go.
Hi.
Hey.
I came a little early. I didn't know, and then because you said, I think it said 8:30 on there, and then,
I did say 8:30, but I got a little, being military, I have to always be early and I have to be prepared. So,
yes.
And plus, I only had my daughter for a limited time, so I have all my notes here on a pad. That is my continuity folder for how to do this. And so I had her on the phone while I was running through everything, and she logged into Rumble so she could see, oh, hey, yeah, it worked. we were able to figure it all out.
I don't do the techie stuff. I mean, I'm very limited.
Just send me a link.
Yeah, that's me. And that's why when you
Yeah,
sent
the
that
whole
link,
thing up
I'm
is
like,
a little intimidating.
well, I didn't understand till you explained that this would feed into Rumble, because I was like, I have no clue how to, I just go watch. I don't participate.
Right. So I just watched Brian do it because that's all I did with him was I watched him do it, and then I'm really good at talking, so then I would just talk.
Right.
So I'm trying to get everything in its place for us to be able to get started. Um, so anything going on that we need to talk about? Anything anybody want to talk about? How about you, Awaken Warrior? What do you want to hear? Awaken Warriors here helping me with the comments.
Nice.
Um, not like here. She's on the live chat, so I can she's given us feedback like, hey, you're like we had two soundtracks going at once. I'm probably hard to follow with just one soundtrack, but when I'm talking on top of myself, that's probably not a good thing.
Well, when I first came on, I call it like reverb, or either like it sounded
Yeah,
like
that
you
was
were
two
talking and there
different
was
tracks.
something else going.
Yeah. Um, so anyway, what else is going on?
Nothing.
I'm just
I was just noticing all that Marina Abramovich stuff coming up to the surface finally for all the regular people.
well, and see, that's kind of the point that I was making earlier, that it does seem like things are speeding up.
Yeah.
So there's, excuse me, a Zero Hedge article out talking about um, the farmland is shrinking and people are starving, and India's cutting off rice to ship out because they don't have enough to eat. And then you have all of these climate change people telling us we got to kill all the animals. It just seems like every day we're overwhelmed, which kind of feeds into that whole tension strategy of how they get you to do things that you wouldn't normally do with these psyops of everything. By Awaken Warrior, thank you for being here. With the psyops of all of the things happening, there does seem to have been a picking up of speed, because every day it's not just like a drop here and then another couple of days and a drop there. It's like every day, multiple things. Like I was just reading here where it says Ukraine Storm Shadow Scout Missile Strike Russia Black Sea Fleet headquarters in Crimea. Um, you know, we're losing the war, but we're going to do something absolutely crazy to provoke Russia, because that's what the whole thing's about anyway.
Yeah.
Um, that kind of stuff is just crazy.
I,
And
I think it has to be to get people to see it, unfortunately.
I agree more.
I
I couldn't
mean,
agree.
which begs the question, how dumb is most of the world, or how brainwashed, I guess, is
Brainwash
most
is
of the
probably up
country.
there. Yeah. Yeah.
Either that, and I think that there's people that are born like us. I am born contrary, and you better prove everything to me. And I'm also born very suspicious. It's like I don't just take what somebody says at face value. You better come up with some reasons and some, evidence. And I guess there's not that
Well,
many of us in the world anymore. I don't know.
what's disheartening to me, and I understand this, and I've said this a couple of times, is the amount of military people that have their head stuck in the sand, and no matter how much evidence you give them, they are just not going to see this because like I had this conversation with the only other person in my family that's retired military. He comes and spends a couple of weeks with me every year. Um, when they finally accept the fact that our government is corrupt, it's been corrupt, they murder and maim and kill people all over the world, they're responsible for coups, etc. When you admit that to yourself, the next logical step is admitting you were part of it.
Right.
And psychologically, for people who, like my cousin was security forces, so I mean, he was a cop and he guarded nuclear weapons deployed. So there were incidents. And you accept the fact that you were there doing that for a basically a rogue government that conned you into thinking after events like 9/11 that you were doing your patriotic duty to go fight and die
Yeah.
or kill people,
You were
and or
betrayed
murder.
the highest betrayal. It's almost
So,
like telling somebody you're going to be a police officer, but really you're making them a criminal.
so there are people who would rather not deal with that.
Mhm. Denial.
Yeah, I mean, it's the
Really.
only way they can um, live and the rest of their life.
It's the only way they
And
can protect their sanity.
yes,
Yeah.
because I've also said that I truly believe that there it's just hard. I'll just leave it at that. It's
Well, I mean, I can see that. I think that I would have to tell myself, though, but I'm innocent. I did not, you know,
yeah.
I
I
did not
mean, if
do
you're
this,
healthy, you can work through
on
it.
purpose. And then it would make me mad. And I'm really surprised that there aren't more. And it's sad that a lot of these people, they do, the ones that realize that, kill themselves. I'm surprised there's not more people military that get mad and don't go, kill some people that military leaders that need to be killed. You know what I mean? Like the enemy.
No, they're not going to do that.
Um, I mean, I'm
They're
glad they don't, but I'm just saying, I'm kind of surprised that somebody hadn't flipped and gone in that direction instead of just taking care of,
Well, it's not that I don't think they're baiting people to do that, but they're baiting everybody to do that, and that's why it's so important that no one does it.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, you
I mean,
can't
it's
play
good they
that game.
haven't. I'm just surprised that I guess it just goes to show that the people that are really truly peacemakers, even if you find out that someone has betrayed you, you still know that taking them out isn't the right thing to do either.
Correct, correct. Um, so what else was going on today? Oh, what's your thoughts on the airplane, the
I,
F-35?
I, I don't know. Did they ever find any quote wreckage? And do we know that the said wreckage is legitimate wreckage?
No, I
Okay.
don't. I've not seen any pictures of the wreckage.
Well, I've seen pictures that people are claiming to be the wreckage, but I'm not sure that it's the wreckage. You know what I mean? We know how they
Oh,
do.
it looks like a bunch of burnt trees.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's actual. I don't see any aircraft parts, but a lot of my friends and uh, one of my friends we just joke about the whole stealth aspect of it. Of course, you can technically see the pieces, but if they were there, but we just keep making jokes about, no, you can't see them because they're stealth. And then you'll have somebody look at you like sitting next to you when you say that, like, is that real? And I'm like, no, that's not real at all.
Right.
It's just you can see it on radar. But it's just funny that I
Well,
hate being
part of the way that they can pull the wool over a lot of people's eyes is because the majority of us are not military. We don't
Right.
know what's so and what isn't. I mean, I know what I know because of my brother, and other relatives that are pilots and been in the military, but I still don't know, near like what you guys know. And the average person doesn't, and they're banking on that, you know.
Right.
Our
Yeah,
our
no
ignorance
doubt.
will cause us to just believe whatever they put in front of us, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right. But what's interesting now that has changed everything is the internet. I
Yeah.
mean, it's changed literally everything because within 5 seconds, people had already told, you know, answered several questions, pointed out all of the questions that needed to be answered. So it's very interesting that the internet has just changed forever news reporting in general.
The internet is what I feel like that possibly the military and Trump have been waiting on to finish off their plan, because they would not have been able to do what they have done without the internet. You think about it, because
Yeah.
they've tried it before with others and they get killed or shot down or whatever. And in this case, in order to get the people have the access to the internet and the phone, and like you said, and the cameras and all the information. And we've never been here before like this. So
Right.
it's harder for them to pull the wool over people's eyes.
So I don't know if you follow Steer Wyatt on True Social.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So he posted, and this, of course, will play right into what we're going to talk about. He posted today on True Social about John of God. Have you heard of him?
Oh God, yeah.
Friend.
Oprah. Yeah. Yes. Maybe that's what
Friend.
we'll call him. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So I first read about this woman, Sabrina Bittencourt, um, who people say committed suicide. She didn't commit suicide, she was murdered.
Right.
And she was murdered right after. She was like a whistleblower on, she was a model, and hung around in that group of people. And as soon as she found out that he had set up a baby farm and was impregnating all of these younger
Mm-hmm.
people to have babies, and he was selling their babies, um, she was murdered, suicided.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, they referred to it as a baby farm. And in the article, the first article I read about it, and I'm like, baby farm? What the hell is that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. So fast forward to when all of this stuff was breaking by clandestine, and all of these people about the Ukrainian biolabs, and then we find out that not only are they in Ukraine, they're in Georgia, they're in um, several countries in Africa, they're basically all over the world.
Yeah.
So um, if you look at where we have funded level 2 and 3 biolabs, and you also look at countries that have had articles, to include England, of baby farms, there's an amazing overlap there.
Hmm.
And a lot of people, because of stem cells and all of that other stuff, believe that selling the babies as babies to adoptive parents isn't the only use for baby farms.
Mm-mm.
And
Yeah.
of course, one of the original pictures from the Ukrainian um, special operation was this huge hospital that in America would be considered like a metropolitan hospital. It was ginormous. They referred to it as a maternity hospital. And I'm like, what on God's green earth would you have a maternity hospital that big in Ukraine? I mean, I know Kiev is fairly big, but not to warrant just a maternity hospital that big.
Mm-mm.
And then I found other articles referring to that as a potential human trafficking operation. So it was just very interesting to me. And then, of course, the farther you dig into, I know there's a lot of trying to pair up these weapons labs with the contractors that built them and stuff like that. But to me, the most fascinating part of them were who in the Senate and the House supported funding them and creating them.
Mm.
Because the one in Ukraine and the highest rated one, or cleared one for, I think it's a 3 or 4, and the one in Georgia, the country, Georgia,
Country, yeah.
actually carry Senator Richard Lugar's name on the building.
Oh,
And keep in mind, Senator Richard Lugar was a Republican from Indiana.
pencil.
So you know right away with stuff like that,
Mhm.
that the craziness of what's going on and what our government has been funding that we have no clue. And the other thing that cracked me up about the original verbiage of the weapons labs after the 91 fall of the Iron Curtain was that the Americans were going to step in to dispose of all of these horrible chemicals that the Soviets were going to use on us, right?
Mm.
And not only have they not disposed of any of them, they've created 3 or 4 times the amount in those same labs.
Mm.
And for what reason?
50 ways to kill the people.
Yeah, your song.
My
So
song, I got to finish that thing.
so it was just go ahead.
I remember seeing pictures of these baby farms you're talking about. Oh my gosh, 3 or 4 years ago, I guess, probably. I mean, I've been on this trail for a while, and Oprah and this John of God and these baby farms. Now, this was before we knew about the biolabs. At this time, it was just the child trafficking, the human trafficking, and like you said, where you've got, of course, Epstein was the same way. He was trying to impregnate. He was trying to get his own
Yes, he was going to
line
create
of
his baby farm in New
babies.
Mexico. Yeah.
But baby parts, it's just like with a car. You sell a car, you can only, sell it.
Oh, don't even say that, Veda. That's so
I
gross.
know it's terrible, but parting it, they make more
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, it's gross.
And the whole thing is horrible. I don't know why God hadn't come back and just set the whole place on fire, but He's waiting on people to get saved. But I don't know. I've seen so much that I hate to say it. I don't know if I'm jaded or tough is the word. It's hard to be shocked anymore.
It is. So I have to give a shout out to my girlfriend, Angie. She just posted in the comments. She found out today Brian Glenn from RSBN is dating Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh yeah,
Okay, well, I don't know who Brian Glenn is, but
you
good for
didn't
him.
know that?
No, I didn't know that. I don't keep up with people's dating life. I don't have that much time.
Well, I don't either, but I remember when somebody was posting about that several weeks ago because I didn't know it either. I was like, he's that really? He's the main one for a long time. He was the one that the nice looking guy with this kind of sandy blonde brown hair and tall and he would always do Trump's rallies. Always, he was the main one that would do his rallies.
Well, at least it's not a Democrat.
That's right. But boy, there's lots of marriages busting up. And poor old Lauren, come on now, Lauren, what were you thinking that night? I don't care if the guy was her husband, okay? That people do in public places floors me. And she really should know better. She knows she's being watched.
So this is my thing. being in the military, at least in a military community, I mean, we definitely were not on a national stage. So on a local stage, especially being a senior female officer, not married,
Right.
um, you live in a fishbowl. And as a colonel, you are responsible for morale, welfare, and discipline in your unit. And you inevitably have to discipline people.
Right.
People that you discipline don't like you. They will do just or say just about anything. And just about anything they say, even though they're under like potential discharge or derogatory information or whatever, still has to be investigated. So you have to live in a fishbowl, and you know that. It's not like, hey, you go home and you have your husband, and everywhere you go, your husband's with you, so you're basically above reproach. Let me tell you, even if a guy came into town and took me to dinner, the next day, everybody in my unit knew.
Wow.
Everybody. So, oh, where were you at last night, Colonel Towner? That literally and I had dinner with a classmate that just happened to be driving up I-95. So it's just crazy. So this is my little fishbowl. She lives in a giant aquarium.
And she knows
So
she does.
she knows that.
She knows she.
So I don't care how drunk you get, you can't be stupid because literally, and I'm not saying this in a bad way because I love her to death. She goes around with a pin poking people in the eyeball.
Right.
And God bless her for doing that because they need to be blinded. And then you can't be at all surprised when you're being followed and somebody has a night vision camera on you. Because you're dumb enough to date a Democrat. Come on, I'm sorry. That just
Well, that's
you
why this whole thing, I'm thinking, it's kind of like with people when they do so good. You know what I mean? Like you're just like, man, you guys are just, you're
don't give
doing
them an
good. And
Achilles
then all of
heel.
a sudden they do something like that. And you're like, you are so smart. You really are a smart person. But this thing right here was just, I mean, you couldn't have been more out to lunch that day, and I mean, you can't let up. This is a battle. And these people are, even if she was tricked into that, first off, she could have at least stopped him. You know what I mean? And said, hey, this is not appropriate. We're in public. And if it's
Right.
one date and he's doing this on one date.
Well, and besides that, and I'm going to be really catty here for just a second, because I can. Democrat men are like Democrat women, and that's
Mhm.
all I'm going to say.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So we'll leave that right there.
Yeah. 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 And so once again, should have known better. I don't know. To me, it was just like, of all the things or of all the people that you could have gone out with, and the places you could have gone, I mean, you can't get sloppy. You just can't get sloppy right now. This is all too important. Your character is on the line. And even though we live in a sinful world, and I'll be honest with you, as gross as that was, because I'm not a PDA person. Okay, I don't like to see it in public. I don't think any of this crap should be in public. But at least she's a woman with a dude, as far as we know, and she's an adult, and she's not dressed up like a man. Trying, you know what I mean? Like I'm
We've
trying to
lowered our
rationalize
standards.
it.
We've lowered our standards quite a bit.
Exactly, the standards are so low, but still, in and of itself, as a conservative woman, okay, I just don't want to see that anywhere. Period. I don't care who's doing it.
Oh,
And she ought to
dang.
know better.
So Judd Morrison, Zulu -6, who's one of my favorites on True Social, just
I love
posted.
I love
I
him.
know he just said, to my comment about the DC Drano's post on Marina Bravovich, he says, "Here's something else to reinforce that. You heard about her latest art show? Question mark. You have to squeeze between two live naked people, a man and a woman, to gain entry to the exhibit."
I
Okay, well,
saw that.
my ass ain't going there.
I saw that. I
So
shared that last night. I think Dom Liqueur shared that on Twitter. And
that's
so,
so gross.
I mean, I don't know what it's going to take for people to see. The problem with stuff like this is people like my parents, not that they need to see it, but like there's a whole group of people that don't even get on Twitter. You know, that's the other thing
True.
is like we think we're getting somewhere, but there's a whole bunch of people that don't do Twitter. And so they don't see this, you know?
Oh, so also, what do you think about the Dallas mayor um, deciding to be a Republican?
I saw that.
How
I
about
wonder
that?
why that wonder what happened with that. All the illegals maybe coming in his town.
I'm I'm jaw dropped by that, actually. Um, I, it's definitely people are waking up, and then it cracks me up every time somebody goes, "Oh, nothing's happening."
I
There's
know.
a lot of stuff happening. You have to want to see it.
Well, you want to see it, but I think sometimes since we have so much information that this information that's coming out, everybody is not, they're missing the point that it's coming out. We found out about it through Rumble, through BitChute. Twitter wouldn't let us share Marina Abramovich a year or two ago. Facebook certainly wouldn't.
Yeah.
We were having to share it through Telegram and different places. And so that's why I'm like, you're crazy because this stuff would have never been out there for the mainstream people to see. 4 years ago,
Yeah.
3 or 4 years ago, this stuff, we were having to hunt it down. It wasn't
Right.
out there. And the thing is, if you go through Twitter, it's like hundreds of patriots are sharing all the same stuff, you know? So it's good because they're saturating the stream. But I think that in and of itself is huge. And I think people are missing that because we're so knowledgeable, you know? This isn't new to us, but it's new to a lot of people. And those are the ones we're trying to reach.
Yes, exactly. So, um, yeah, it's just it's crazy, 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 crazy. Um,
I want to know when it's Carrie Lake's fight. I thought she only had like, what was it, 6 months afterwards? I mean, bottom line, she's not going to be governor this year. I mean, this crazy woman gets to stay in there.
well, I don't know that she still has an existing lawsuit
Right.
um, that she was just providing an update to. So that's not over yet.
God love her. By the time she gets through fighting, it's going to be time to re up. She still needs to do
So
it, but I'm just like, dang, you know, our court system. I swear, I don't know. I guess Trump and this plan is the only answer because my thought is, why can't we go in there and take the keys to everything, all their offices in each
I know, right?
state, and go, you're locked out. Every one of you, you're fired. Get the hell out. We are going to bring people into the interim, and then just like if it was any other corrupt company, they would go in and they would tell all the corrupt, they would arrest all the corrupt people, and they would run the business or sell it or whatever they're going to do. I
Yeah,
just,
we'll see. I don't know what the process is going to be, but I'm going to enjoy it when it starts happening.
me too. I'm just tired of feeling like a hostage in my own country.
I know. I agree with that part. So also wanted to mention this. I read earlier, Wall Street Apes, who I absolutely love.
I love
Ken
him.
Griffin literally robbed us of hundreds of billions of dollars, over 300 billion he funneled into shell accounts in the Cayman Islands we've uncovered. The fine, $7 million. He steals that in less than 5 minutes with market manipulation. This is a GOP mega donor. And I really think that's important to point out because people need to understand that this is not one party versus the other party. This is people who already have billions and billions of dollars stealing more billions of dollars from us every day.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, in this book that we're going to begin reviewing, and in several of our other books that we've talked about, you see that reoccurrence over and over again of using the shell companies in the Bahamas as the shell company haven of where they do their money laundering.
I'm going to be ignorant for a minute, and I've heard this term my whole life. But what is the definition of a quote shell company? Is it a company that doesn't really exist? It's just in a name, and they use it to launder money.
So technically, the company literally exists, it legally exists, but it only exists on the like a facade. It's like the mailing address. It's a
Right.
brick and stone building that has like a mailing address. There's people in many cases that actually work inside. Like one of them I was reading, they would have like $75 million US dollars in cash on hand at any one time. So they don't sell products, they don't sell services.
Right.
They register a company, they register a bank account, and they use that bank account to take in money that is either comes in cash due to the sale of drugs, the sale of weapons, the sale of people, and they deposit it there. And then that bank turns around and buys real estate, or the company buys real estate with it, they're laundering it into, or they invested in businesses in the United States or whatever. So they're turning dark money into real assets. That's what the company does. So they refer to it as a shell because it
Empty.
isn't, yeah,
Yeah. Well,
empty
that's
is
what
of any real business.
Well, that's what when I was watching that Murdoch trial, he had one of those. And it was called the same name as whatever this, I can't remember the name now, but let's just say it's Falcon or whatever. And Falcon was also the name of a legit company that held funds, and stuff for people when they
Like a
would do
private
all these
equity.
transactions. And he had his was the same name except for it didn't have like Inc. or LTD after whatever, but it was the exact same name so that it didn't look when people, were just his people in his office were passing their, depositing their checks or whatever, they would think it was going to that real one, but it was really going to his fake one.
Yes. So that's kind of a trick that a lot of them do. For example, they actually believe that um, what is it? Oh, BLM, like Bureau of Land Management. They will
Right.
use the same names. So when you search on stuff, you don't find what you're looking for. And they do that a lot. As a matter of fact, we're going to find out about that in this book as well, where they hide companies within companies. So that was one of the things that we learned in the last two sections of the book we just finished, which The Third Way. The author actually believes, I'll just give you a little cheat, because it's all going to be released on Sunday anyway for free. But the author believes that the CERN in Switzerland, that is like the collider, the Big Bang garbage, is a company within a company. They have spent over $6 billion playing around, coming up with gray matter that may or may not have existed right after the quote unquote Big Bang. So $6 billion with no listing of who the contractors are, no total list of who all the scientists participating in it is. And the only thing that governments normally spend $6 billion, and ironically enough, Germany is the main funder of it. But generally, the only thing they spend that much money on is military projects. So also, there's these things called strangelets, literally spelled strange and then LET. So strangelets are, we are told initially by the people at CERN, cannot be produced by the function the collider's currently doing. Yet, they just bought 2 different cameras that were hundreds of millions of dollars. One of them weighs like 20,000 pounds.
A camera?
Yes, because it has to take, like, I won't get the number right, but literally like 1,000,000 pictures a second to capture these things colliding and hitting each other.
Oh my God.
So they they bought, this is the logic. They bought a camera to take pictures of the thing they promise can't happen.
To prove that it can't happen.
2 of them.
Oh my gosh.
So, because if it can happen, it's really bad. So,
But we've been living in the world with these, whatever this is that they're trying to get pictures
also,
of now for all this time.
yeah, also, we learned that the magnets used to create the speed of these things moving through air are so strong that some believe when one of them malfunctioned, that an airplane, because it far exceeds the gravitational pull of the Earth, that when it malfunctioned, that it caused an airplane crash that was about 100 miles away.
Wow.
So, in what every time I read about this, every time I read about any of this stuff, whether it's the directed energy weapons or the fact that the United States has launched nuclear bombs into the Van Allen belts, trying to cut an opening for us to get to the moon because we didn't need it before, but some reason now we do. When I hear about them detonating nuclear weapons in outer space, and obviously there's radiation fallout from that, I read about them basically having magnets so strong that it can change the gravitational pull of the Earth, and then they turn around and talk about cow farts are causing climate change. I'm sorry, I just lose my shit every time I hear that.
It's
I'm like,
this goes to
cows
show
have
that
been around for 1,000 years, and you want to talk about all of this crap that you're doing, and it's the cows, and it's the cars? Are you kidding me?
well, and see, that's just the whole thing. Logic, there's nothing logical about them. That's how you know that this is a satanic war. Because Satan is full of chaos and confusion and insanity. So anytime any of that stuff is going on, it's coming from Satan. you know, and so it's these people that are being used by Satan, they totally believe all of this. They believe it. That's the sad thing. You know, I'm like, you're really stupid and you believe the stupid. You know, I mean, it's just stupid on stupid. And when you look at everything that Satan does, you know, and it's like you said it, these people are stupid. I mean, I
I'm
just
looking
don't.
at my I'm looking at my microphone because Julie just said that there's an echo. I'm not
Okay.
sure how I fix that. My soundboard technician took the night off.
Do you have a reverb um,
Um,
dial or thing?
I have this tiny little soundboard that we bought. Oh, yes, I do, right there. So,
Yeah, mess with your reverb because that's what
okay,
it
how's that? Is
sounds
that
like.
better?
Talk
Julie,
some.
is that better for you? Let me know in the comments. I turned it down, so hopefully that's better. All right. I posted a screenshot in True Social. Okay. Oh, she said it still echoes. This sounds a little.
I'm gonna go use the bathroom real fast,
All
and I'll be
right.
back before we start this.
Okay. That's as low as the reverb will go. So hopefully that's tolerable and doesn't give anybody a headache. And I'm going to go ahead. We've just got a couple of minutes. So you go ahead and do your thing. And because I'm going to talk about the talking point points that you and me and Miss Julie went over last time. So just let me know when you get back. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and start. I appreciate everybody that showed up early, helping me get all of my system checked out. I'm going to have to occasionally put on my old lady glasses, so you'll have to excuse that. But the first thing I wanted to go over is a couple of talking points. We've never done this. Y'all that have been with me for a while know that I love reading and doing book reviews. So we decided to try to do it in a podcast where we could have some interaction with everybody. So this is going to be the first one that we're doing. And so wanted to go over kind of just some ground rules, if you will, because we all recognize that what we're doing is hard for people who've been lied to their whole life, finally learning the truth. Posted the instructions on a post. Oh, I don't have that kind of a board, Julie. Sorry. As far as this is kind of a weird soundboard, but anyway, we'll
There's
work through
no
it.
echo on my end, just so
There's
you know.
none. Okay.
Mm-mm.
All right. So anyway, back to our thing. Understanding that what we discover in some of these books, depending on what religion you are, or what um, uh, what your belief system is, what your social opinions are. Um, Sometimes some of this is very difficult to handle. We were just talking earlier about learning, about the government that I worked for my whole life. Being basically evil. It is hard, and all of us process those things differently. It's basically a grief cycle. You go through all of you can't believe it. You're going to try to deny it even happened. Then you get angry. And eventually you come to terms with it. So, um, what we talk about in these books, obviously, you just take with a grain of salt. I would ask you initially, it's very easy to try to reject anything that you don't want to hear or that you don't like. What I had to learn to do when I was on active duty and um, doing a lot of the initial exploring, reading, and research that I've done, a lot of it didn't fit with my own paradigms. And what I tried to do is instead of reading less, is to read more and to read all different kinds of opinions and facts, or facts that people think are facts that may be opinions, until until I knew enough to form my own opinion. So, when you talk about one of my master's degrees in strategic studies, and basically that's a study of the entire world, both geopolitical, military, um, and you can't leave out people's religion when you're doing that study. So, re- religions always play a role, and what we can't do is allow our religions, if they have in the past been involved in doing things that aren't right, we can't give them a pass. They have to be held accountable too, regardless of which one it is. Um, so also, just to set the stage for the book, I want to say a couple of things. We learned in Anthony Sutton's books, and if you haven't read those book reviews, they're on True Social under the International Syndicate page. I'd highly encourage you to buy the books or look at the book reviews. But the bottom line, if I could say it in a sentence, is that the term that I use is international syndicate. The reason why I use that term is because what I kept finding when you would find something out, um, people would always want to argue about the name. Is it actual socialism, or is it totalitarianism, or is it communism? And they get so mired in the details of the ism that you miss the entire boat of what was going on about it. And that was the same thing with the religion things. If you mention the word Jewish, then immediately you got into this argument about, oh, well, those are bad Jews, and there's good Jews, and there's blood Jews. I, that to me, in most of the cases, um, diminished the actual point that was being made. And so I came up with, I know you're gonna hate this, but a gender neutral term uh, that was called International Syndicate. And basically, what that does is it embraces the synonyms of cabal, deep state, because what most people don't understand it is a criminal syndicate that colluded together, and it is comprised of church members, of all religions,
Yes.
of um, industrialists, business owners, the owners of Google do it today, and Apple, um, BlackRock, and it's politicians, it's government workers, all of
Bank,
those people. So, and bankers.
banks,
When you have people that are in and out of the bank, the SEC, the Fed, the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, the World Bank, all they do is trade chairs all day long. It's a syndicate. It's all the same people. So I use the word international syndicate. You'll hear me use it often. It refers to all of those people that are behind the curtain, which we're going to peek behind the curtain in this book.
that's a good general label, Colonel, because people are
Yes, thank
hung up on labels and branding. So that's a good
you.
brand.
Okay. So, um, there's also a strategy that we're going to explore that was created by this international syndicate that is called the strategy of tension. That's going to come up often in all of the books that we talk about. And I want you to keep this in the back of your mind when you are processing information today, because always, whether it's all of the stuff that's in the news about the border, that creates tension. Whether it's what's in the news about the Hunter Biden getting away with stuff you and I couldn't get away with, it creates tension.
True.
This is a psychological trick that they do in what they cover in the media to create this tension among all of us, because when they do that, they can create a left tension and a right tension where they can get you to then move in the middle, where the right answer may always be to the right, but they're going to make the right so unappealing that they push you to the middle. And you can see it play out in so many things that you listen to on the news. What about the January 6th? Those were all right-wing people, and they were insurrectionists. They make the right so toxic that you know you're not going to go to the left, but I might be able to get you to go in the middle, um, and they shame you. They say, you definitely don't want to affiliate with those people over there because they're insurrectionists." You just have to keep that in mind when you listen to every newscast. Who are they putting on the left and who are they putting on the right? Because they do it every single time. It's a strategy of tension. It was created in the early 1900s to get people to do things they wouldn't otherwise do and to give up their freedom. So, um, also, we're gonna talk about, let's see, Operation Gladio in a nutshell came up in our last book, and it basically began before World War II was over, like around 1942, and it was the transition plan into what we now refer to as a forever war, um, by planting terrorist cells or military cells, whatever you want to call them, all over the world. They were fully funded. They were equipped with explosives, as we're going to see in this book, weaponry to pull off anything that they were asked to do. Um, and when I came across Operation Gladio in the book we just finished, um, called The Third Way, I had never heard of it. And generally speaking, even if I've not researched a particular operation, I've pretty much heard of most of them. Most of them I learned about during the master's degree program. This one I'd never heard of, and that fascinated me. And I want to say up front that this book um, leaves out, they focus, and not that it's not a good place to focus, but they focus primarily on UK and, the CIA's role in these terror cells, but I want everybody to know up front that, um, the whole idea of Operation Gladio was German. It was developed prior to the end of World War II. It was completely set up before the end of World War II. These cells were used to smuggle Nazis out of Germany and into foreign countries all over the world, primarily through Spain, Argentina, and Egypt, but many others. And of course, we took a whole crapload of them into the United States in its own operation. But Operation Gladio was originally called, the people in it were originally called werewolves. And you're like, "Well, that's weird." It is weird. But the reason why is because of a guy by the name of Wolfe, Wolfe. He was and we'll get to him, but I just wanted to emphasize the fact that what you're gonna hear in here is a lot of the role of the CIA and UK, but every bit of Operation Gladio was created, by Germany. The concept, and it was basically sold by, Nazi People's Freedom, and we'll get into that. So, let's go ahead and dive in. So, the first, chapter we're gonna do just the first 2 chapters tonight, and I thought maybe that's kind of a good, uh, pace if we do a couple of chapters, every time we do this, and then if you don't have time, you can always go back and pull the video and watch the 2 chapters before you participate in the next one. So, with that, we're gonna, talk about the original stay behind units. This is a quote from Steve Kangas about CIA atrocities. The Association for Responsible Dissent estimates that by 1987, 6 million people had died as a result of CIA covert operations. He labeled it as an American Holocaust. It says that the CIA justifies these actions as part of a war against communism. And you're going to see that a lot because that's what I'm telling you. That's the tension. You have communism on the left and you have socialism on the right. We all know that socialism is not a right aspect. Socialism is just short of communism, which is just short of totalitarianism, and they are all very far left government, top-down run, controlled economies and government. That's not when you go through a continuum with those total controls on the left, you come down that continuum in a diagonal to zero control, which is anarchy. So the only thing right of a federal republic, which is what we are, is anarchy. So it is not a right and left, but they market it as that so they can create that left-right tension, opposites, so they can get you to herd down the middle. I just want you to keep that in mind. Um, so they labeled everything they did in supporting Germany in the middle of World War I and II as a fight against communism. But what we also found out in An Anton Sutton's book, Anthony Sutton's book, is that the international syndicate funded both the Bolshevik Revolution, the Hitler's climb to be in charge. They funded him while he was in a jail cell. And if you don't believe me, go read his books because there's videos out there, catch up. They funded both of them. They also funded FDR in his socialist takeover of the United States, which was called the New Deal. And if you're not aware, there's a National Recovery Act that was passed prior to the New Deal that was found unconstitutional because it was implementing socialism in the United States. So FDR is a socialist. He had always been a socialist. Socialism ran in his family from the 1850s with his uncle. So he wrote papers about how we need to be a socialist country. Definitely in the family. So this Steve Kangas goes on to say that the only threats, not only threats to American business and interests abroad, but also liberals or even moderate social reforms, political instabilities, the unwillingness of a leader to carry out Washington dictates, basically all end up with the leader being dead. Nothing has infuriated CIA directors like a nation's desire to stay out of the Cold War. So that kind of sets the stage. Next, it talks about we're fighting the wrong enemy. So Allen Dulles' contention in 1942 in the middle of the World War II, because it was not finished at that point. Allen Dulles is the Swiss director of the precursor to CIA, which is the Office of Strategic Services, OSS. In 1942, Dulles went around on a speaking tour telling everybody that we were fighting the wrong people. We should not be fighting Germany, even though Germany was murdering millions of Jewish people and Christians. We should be fighting the Soviets. And he repeated that over and over again. He had received word via a Vatican messenger from SS Chief Heinrich Himmler and Walter Schnellenberg, head of the SS Foreign Intel Services, that the Nazi government wanted to seek a separate peace agreement with the United States. And just a newsflash, they tried to do that with the Soviets too. They were just playing both people. So the justification was so that Germany could help the Allies turn their undivided attention to the Soviets. Now, I'm going to point out here too that part of Germany's greater pan-Europe German vision at the time, both before World War I, well, for a long time, let's just say from the early 1800s, was that there was going to be a European entity and they were going to be in charge. And their definition of Europe went all the way to the Ural Mountains, which is halfway through Russia. So they had ulterior motives for wanting the US to be on their side to fight against Russia because they wanted Russia. And I would argue they still want it today. They want it for the resources. So Dulles then sends a message to Prince Max von Hohenlohe, a Prussian aristocrat and businessman, who ends up meeting with him in Bern, Switzerland, which is where Alan Dulles's office is, right down the street from the Bank of International Settlements, set up to launder German stolen gold, just as an aside. So his argument to Dulles was that you need a strong Germany, not a weak Germany, to fight against Bolshevism. Bolshevism. Say that. So what happens is that while Bill Donovan, who was the OSS guy in charge, and by the way, he was a major general at the time that he was in charge, Dulles meets with him and tells Donovan about his great idea of joining with the Nazis to fight against the Soviets. So Dulles's justification was that the Soviets created genocide far worse than the Third Reich. But his point was this: they endorse a godless ideology and call for world revolution and the collapse of capitalism from a guy who doesn't believe in capitalism. And he believed that because Hitler, having been raised Catholic and embraced the Catholic Church, and the majority of the officers in the SS embracing the Catholic Church, that was a far better option to partner with than the Soviets. That's just his opinion. So his justification was basically the Nazis are Christian. I've never met a Christian Nazi, but we'll take his word for it. He also tried to make the argument that they were reprivatizing all of their industry, which they were not. Just in case y'all don't know, Alan Dulles, who's running the European office of the OSS, precursor to the CIA, has a brother, John W. Foster. The two of them were together in a law firm, and they represented almost all of the German companies in America in the lead up to World War II and even during World War II. So almost all of them, IG Farben, there's just a litany of them, all had American counterpart branches. And the law firm that Alan Dulles and his brother worked at represented almost all of them, as well as Rockefeller and all of the other ones. So John W. Foster, his maternal grandfather, served as Secretary of State under Benjamin Harris, and Robert Lansing, his uncle by marriage, had been Woodrow Wilson's Secretary of State. Dulles, the John Foster one, was also quite the ladies' man, evidently, both him and his brother, having affairs all over the world when they traveled with royalty. Dulles entered the diplomatic service in 1916 and was stationed in Vienna and later in Bern. In 1922, which is after World War I, he served as the chief of the Near East Division of the U.S. State Department. He left that post to go to Sullivan and Cromwell, which is the lawyer's office, where his brother John Foster Dulles was a partner. Sullivan and Cromwell floated bonds for Krupp. That's another CRUPPAG, which was another German mega company who manufactured much of the German arms used to fight World War II. They financed the building up, and also so that you realize that Germany used Soviet, sorry, in the intervening war years between World War I and World War II. They built, because they were under strict restrictions, paying supposedly reparations, they couldn't have weapons manufacturing. So what they did was they used their money and built those weapon manufacturing plants in Russian territory, Soviet territory, to include Ukraine. And the Germans reconstituted their military, building the facilities in these foreign countries to include Russia, who now they're trying to convince the United States to go in to slaughter. It's just crazy. So back to Dulles. Um, he managed the finances of IG Farben, which is a chemical company used to produce the sarin gas that murdered millions of Jews. In addition to his law practice, Allen Dulles was elected in 1927 the first president of the Council on Foreign Relations.
Mhm.
Let that sink in.
Yeah.
So he is about as interventionist as anybody there is. And supposedly, the purpose of the CFR, as stated when it was originally created, was to engineer a U.S. foreign policy of interventionism in order to make the world safe for democracy. There's so many oxymorons in that one sentence. I'm just going to go ahead and go on. Um, so we also need to cover who General Reinhard Gehlen is. Reinhard Gehlen was the head of German military intelligence during World War II. And just as a news flash, he also remained the chief of German intel for Chancellor Adenauer after World War II. Okay, just keep that in mind. He had the same job before World War II ended and after. So you can't convince me that Germany lost that war. Not the Nazis lost that war. Okay, so knowing that the defeat of the Third Reich was inevitable, he concocted an idea of forming clandestine guerrilla squads, Operation Gladio, composed of Hitler Youth and diehard fascist fanatics, sounds like Antifa, as stay-behind units. These units, Galen informed Dulles, would serve to police as police forces to ward off Soviet invasion. So they were to be planted everywhere there was the threat of communism, which of course was everywhere. They saw commies behind every rock. The Nazi general referred to these units as his secret army of werewolves, individuals who could function as ordinary citizens during the day and communist killers by night. Each werewolf unit, Galen said, had access to buried depots of food, radios, weapons, and explosives. Now, what happens next is Dulles, as they are transitioning to, I'm saying this literally is just a change of tactics. The Hitler, Germans, Nazis never lost. They transitioned before the end of the official war, which the general surrendered. None of the political figures in Germany ever surrendered. They sent their token generals to sign the surrender. And they had already transitioned tactics and operational processes to the stay-behind units. They were going to continue to fight. They were just going to do it in a decentralized way. And that's what this is saying to us. Galen met with Dulles and basically bartered him getting off scot-free of any Nazi consequences for his role in World War II, if the deal he made was if he um, gave the locations to Dulles, that he would be allowed to maintain his job in the new administration in Germany. So Wolfe conformed to the Aryan ideal, being 6 foot tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, high forehead. He was an SS officer. Um, he joined, and 5 years later, he was in charge of the entire SS. His principal assignment during the war was the transportation of Jews to concentration camps.
Mm.
He was later complicit in the murder of over 300,000 men, women, and children. In 1942, Wolfe was appointed the SS adjutant to Mussolini. Now, this is where it gets very important because Wolfe went and set up all of these stay-behind units in Italy, and Italy is going to be a major focus in the next few chapters. Along with securing and fortifying the werewolves, Dulles busied himself with arranging a separate place with for the Nazis to operate and exclude the Soviet Union. This is while they're leading up to the end of the war. So it gets revealed to Stalin that Dulles is negotiating on behalf of FDR with the Germans to gang up on the Soviets. So FDR immediately, once Stalin exposes this, says that, oh, that's just a misrepresentation of actuality. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have a conference, the US, Great Britain, and the Soviets, and they meet at Yalta. And now Stalin already knows that the US is two-faced as they go into this meeting. The eastern border of Germany was moved westward, and parts of Poland were handed over to the Soviet Union, which we know. What remained of Germany was to be divided into 4 zones. And before the Yalta Agreement had even dried, Dulles transported Galen and his top representatives to Fort Hunt, Virginia, and they were wined and dined by Donovan, who was the OSS commander. So Galen is in the United States as the chief of German intel, basically discussing these stay-behind units. And it is agreed upon in this meeting in Fort Hunt, Virginia, that the Army G2 intel resources are going to be used to fund the stay-behind units. And new guerrilla soldiers from the ranks of the Third Reich veterans, anti-communist credentialed people, however you figure that out, they were no longer going to be known as werewolves. They were going to be known as gladiators. And they would be commissioned to ward off communist invaders in the post-war Europe. The operation in which they were engaged was to be known as Gladio, which represents short swords Roman gladiators used to kill their opponents. So that's where they got their name.
Mm-hmm.
So immediately, James Jesus Angleton, who, if you don't know, is instrumental in the murder of JFK later on, is working in the OSS. He eventually becomes the number 3 guy in the new CIA. But Angleton was a rabid anti-communist, devout Roman Catholic, very odd guy. He wore like black robes, drank bourbon for breakfast, went to Yale, just a really odd guy. So he's very good friends with Ezra Pound, E.E. Cummings, T.S. Eliot. He knows how to speak German, Italian, and like 3 other different languages. And his specialty area in the OSS is secret counterintelligence, which is the Gladio units. And so Angleton's father, interestingly enough, also served in the OSS. His first name was Hugh Angleton. He was the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Italy. Italy features very much in the initial creation of the Gladio units. So he also um, owned National Cash Register Company in Italy. So his major headquarters was in Milan. For he owned the franchise of National Cash Register in Italy, which is crazy, and was very staunchly supportive of Mussolini, which is kind of weird because Mussolini really wanted to take most of the businesses and nationalize them. So it's just odd that all of these business owners are so controlled. They're under the impression that the the control is going to allow them to stay in charge and it be more like ran like a cartel. Um, but that's generally not what happens when they actually get to be in charge for real. Um, so, right? One of his big contacts in the Mussolini government was a guy by the name of Prince Giulio Valerio Borghese, who is a member of the Catholic black nobility.
Hmm.
Yeah. So Borghese was the leader of a unit called X for 10th MUS, M-A-S, and it's Italian for light flotilla. He was in the Navy in Italy. And so he fought with the totalitarian government of Mussolini, supposedly against the communists, which is what they all started claiming after they were fighting against UK and the US and everybody else. It wasn't just communists because we certainly weren't communists, at least at that time. Um,
Right.
and Borghese met with General Wolfe and Angleton at a villa. And most of the operation that was conducted in Italy was done on the island of Sardinia, which is very interesting because if you do any research on Sardinia, there's a lot of really odd things that happen there. So the Xmas was kind of unit was like a transition into this whole gladiator structure, and the Borghese was basically facing a firing squad if he didn't cooperate with the stay behind units because of his support for Mussolini. So he kind of went into the OSS under the cloudy haze of do it or die. So when Borghese was arrested when they were doing the coercion, um, it was Angleton who secured his release into U.S. Army custody. The Black Prince was dressed in an American uniform and transported from Milan to Rome. Angleton needed Borghese and over 10,000 fascists who had fought under his command for these stay behind units. So they basically use him to create these Italian stay behind units, and the State Department starts working with the Italian police force, the Italian intelligence, the Italian Secret Service, and puts all of those people at the disposal of Angleton to implement this plan. So Borghese, the Gladio forces in Italy were divided up into 40 main groups, and they specialized in sabotage, espionage, propaganda, escape tactics, and guerrilla warfare. The training camps, as I stated, was in Sardinia. The camp was equipped with the guy from Germany, Intel Galen, who also added to the training. So you had guys from Germany, France, and Austria all streaming into Sardinia to begin their training in these stay-behind units, all under the auspices of OSS, which transitions into the CIA. So at the end of chapter 1, they discuss the funding. Gladio was a covert operation and had not been initiated by an act of Congress or a mandate from the Pentagon. $200 million in original funding came from what Rockefeller and Mellon foundations. Just let that sink in. The world would not be safe for democracy ever again. The future of Gladio would come to reside within the U.S., within American ghettos. Because, as we're going to learn in chapter 2, there's a key guy by the name of Colonel Paul Helliwell, and he worked a lot in China in the opium trade in his first dealings in OSS. That's where he cut his teeth at. And those of you who may or may not know that the England, UK fought 2 opium wars. China kept trying to get out of the opium trade because the UK was poisoning their people with it in the fields of growing it and trying to sell it to the local Chinese. So they kept trying to kick the Brits out. And the last war that was fought, Britain, the UK, got possession. That's how they got possession of Hong Kong in the settlement of that second opium war. That's how they ended up with Hong Kong. Hong Kong was a port for opium trade as well as Shanghai. And our, whatever you want to call these guys, these criminal cartel, people like Helliwell were over there helping them create this production capability with the sale of it and everything else, shipping it. So there, Helliwell develops a relationship with Lucky Luciano, the mobster, and Meyer Lansky. Helliwell creates a bank called Castle Bank in the Bahamas, and they begin flooding the United States with heroin, and the profits of the heroin is going to be used to pay for Operation Gladio. It's going to pay for the equipment, and they're going to make a lot of explosives, ammunition. They need media on the payroll because of the propaganda elements. Because every time they do a false flag with one of these terrorist units, they have to have the media in their court to immediately start printing what they want people to know about the event, which is always to blame it on the communists. Now, what you're going to start seeing immediately is how similar what happens in the United States in these terrorist attacks and immediately blaming them on the Muslims. Think tactics. Think tactics, because everything that we're going to learn in this book has been used repeatedly. You just change who you're blaming and you blame where the attack is. Everything else stays the same. There's a boogeyman. They're going to create the boogeyman. You will find that out because ISIS, the Al-Qaeda, all are Gladio units. This is going to become crystal clear. So they create the enemy, then they blame their event on the enemy, and they use it to change everything about your country, whether it's the Patriot Act or whatever. So back to the book. So now we have Castle Bank that's set up in the Bahamas. We have Meyer Lansky getting in on the action, and we have Lucky Luciano. Now, the reason why we have to have them is because they have decided to target the Black community in Harlem as going to be the drug addicts that's going to pay for the heroin. They're going to focus selling heroin in the United States, not to the general population, specifically to the Black population, specifically initially in Harlem. And Helliwell is going to be the one that sets this up. He's going to meet with the people who control the streets in that neighborhood, which is the mafia, to do this. So in the million declassified pages stored and indexed on the website of Mary Farrell Foundation, Helliwell's name appears only once on a list of documents withheld from inspection during the CIA's 1974 record search concerning Watergate. And the reason that's important is Helliwell's name has been buried everywhere. You cannot find anything with his name on it, but he's instrumental in Operation Gladio. They couldn't have done it without him. So he goes on to talk about how Helliwell had been working with General Chiang, which was the Chinese nationalist that was fighting against Mao. We basically overturned the emperor and installed Chiang. Chiang is our creation there, and he's now fighting Mao to maintain control over China. And we had originally been funding him extensively, but as you'll see, we kind of do the same thing we did to the Soviets to him. We have a pattern that will repeat itself. So the Chiang sold opium to the Chinese addicts in order to raise funds for his army. Now, this is while Helliwell is over there. So that's where Helliwell gets the idea. You can sell drugs to people that you don't want, and then make money off of them so that you can do what you want to do. So Helliwell's task was to provide covert assistance to Chiang in order to make all of the shipments work over there. That's what he was doing for the OSS, for the U.S. government. Helliwell presented this idea to Wild Bill Donovan. Donovan, again, was the guy that's in charge of the OSS. He shares it with James Angleton and Alan Dulles and William Stevenson, who is in charge of the British security coordination of this whole operation. They're delighted with it. They think it's a great way to funnel money, sell opiates to the Black population in Harlem, and fund the Gladio. So the money for the opiates would eventually come from Nazi gold laundered and manipulated by Dulles and Stevenson through a corporation they set up as a front company or as a shell company called the World Commerce Corporation, which was a financial firm established by Donovan. So they're going to basically, you'll see in a few minutes or in another chapter where the Nazi gold comes from and where it's laundered through. But they're going to set up a whole bunch of fake companies along with that fake Castle Bank to work all the money through and fund Gladio. That's all of it in a nutshell. So by the close of World War II, Honeywell has a number of Army intel buddies like E. Howard Hunt, who we all know from the Watergate scandal. He comes up in all of these things, to include the JFK murder. Lucien Honing, a former member of the French Foreign Legion, strong ties to the Corsican Mafia, which was there. Tommy the Corcoran, which is a lawyer serving in the Strategic Service Unit. Lieutenant General Claire Chennault, a military advisor to the Chinese Chiang guy, and also the founder of the Flying Tigers, whose aircraft was used to create Civil Air Transport, another CIA front, which flew surplus aircraft and used it to launder weapons into Burma, and from Burma, drugs back into China. So they had this whole system set up over there, and basically what they want to do is mirror that in the United States, which of course we know they did very well at. Helliwell and his compatriots had created a model for trafficking drugs and would result in the formation of Air America. That's eventually what the Civil Air Transport Company became. Um, Air America was used in South America to do the exact same thing. This model will be used repeatedly throughout the CIA history. The CIA fleet of planes transported opiates and cocaine during and after the Vietnam conflict, thanks to the efforts of the Burma plateau where it was grown. Minor poppy cultivation area was turned into the largest producing poppy region in the world.
Wow.
Wild Bill had drafted plans in the post-war world CIA that came up with turning all of this covert funding for Gladio and generating the cash to supply the heroines. So as the smuggling heroin into the United States was almost impossible at the time because the mafia controlled all the ports. And that's where, like in New York, they were going to need the mafia to be able to move them through the ports. Because remember, back in this day, that's when all the Teamsters and we just finished with World War II, so there were lots of port facilities, very robust capability, but every bit of that was ran by the mob. So Halliwell's the son of a prominent English cloth buyer and member of the inner circle of the OSS. They also mention, and I'm going to show you a diagram in a minute, the other members of the OSS with basically every elite American dignitary at the time, um, Henry Morgan, which was son of J.P. Morgan, Nicholas Roosevelt, Paul Mellon, the son of Andrew Mellon, David Bruce, who was Andrew Mellon's son-in-law, all of the Vanderbilt clan, the Carnegies, the DuPonts, and I thought this was interesting, the Ryan family. I'm wondering if that family is related to the Paul Ryan that we know. Just an interesting side note. Okay, so Angleton was a Yale graduate. We've already talked about his dad being involved in Italy. And all of the common denominators swirl around this company, Sullivan and Cromwell, which is where the Dulles brothers were, and the Rockefeller Empire. So all of these same people sit on all of the same bank boards, all the same Wall Street firms, and they just go through a whole litany of how they're all related. And just as a side note, I like to look up the families of these players. So when I got to Wild Bill Donovan and his background, he married the heiress of one of the richest families in America at the time. Her name, although in this book they misspelled it, they said her name was Ruth Ramsey. Her name is actually Rumsey. It's Rumsey, and their family was from Buffalo. Their family owned like 24 of 42 square miles of downtown Buffalo. They owned all of the railroads. They owned the banks. I mean, they literally owned Buffalo. And this Bill Donovan is off running around all over the world starting wars. It's just bizarre. I guess that's what they did for fun. So you've got Donovan, Angleton, and Dulles viewing Helliwell's plan of selling smack to the black jazz subculture in Harlem as the initial money supply for funding this monster. So it goes through a whole bunch of people and it talks about, and they justify all of this by how bad communism is. They're literally talking about addicting Americans to heroin to fight this thing called communism. It's laughably absurd. Whatever. So they take one immorality supposedly and trade it for another, and somehow that works in their mind. So anyway, For those of you who don't know, Lucky Luciano is a big Sicilian mafia guy. So keep in mind, we're funding all of these stay behind units primarily right now. The emphasis was placed on Italy. And it just so happens that Lucy Luciano ends up in jail for prostitution and all these other things. And they have to work out a deal with getting Lucky Luciano out of jail. And guess where he gets deported to? Italy. And guess what he's really good at? Setting up drug networks. So I'm sure that's all just a coincidence.
Hmm.
So part of the arrangement is meeting with all of the mafia bosses in Italy, which of course the Italian mafia was really good at doing on our behalf. So Lucky imports heroin from Oh, he at the so how this all got tied in was Lucky had already set up some Chinese, heroin coming in from Shanghai, which is where the Brits were selling it out of, and the products had been going to all different, um, locations, but it was only 3%, almost all of it was sugar. So it didn't create the epidemic that a new opium that's going to be imported via this deal, um, is going to do to the Harlem community. So it goes on and it talks about how Lucky ended up in jail with his prostitution, and then how they break him out of jail. Um, then we get to the part where even so, April 15th, 1943, the OSS was charged with implementing plans for the Allied invasion of Sicily. Now, this is going at to the end of the World War II, where supposedly Lucky Luciano did some airdropping and let everybody know there, and so he was held as a hero in his hometown. So that's how come he ended up getting deported back to Sicily. And at the time in Italy, it's said, and I have not independently corroborated this, but this is the second book I've read that made this point, that a lot of the mafia had been taken care of by Mussolini. Mussolini had, because the mafia worked against him initially, had basically just wiped them all out. So basically, what we were doing by re-importing Lucky Luciano over to Italy and beefing up the use of the Italian mob over there was basically recreating the mob in Italy, which was not a good thing because at one point they were killing as many as 5 people a day
Hmm.
throughout the country of Italy after they reconstituted themselves. So, not a good deal for Italy. Um, and it names names and everything, but I think just the concept is important. So, we get to a guy by the name of Vito Genovese. He's Luciano's right-hand guy, um, and he operates as the translator at US Army headquarters in Naples, Italy. New York's former lieutenant governor, Charles Paletti, whom Lucky describes as one of our best friends, was appointed the military governor in Italy. So basically, after World War II, there was a military governor in Germany. His name was McCloy. He was a total disaster. So evidently, this guy was too. So I don't know where they're getting these people from. Oh, New York. Haha. Charles Paletti um, was the military governor in Italy. So he basically is responsible for reconstruction after the, you know, killing of Mussolini. So basically, he sets up a black market and makes millions. He creates a monopoly on flour, oil, sugar, beans, salt, cigarettes, everything. And so this Genevieve guy and him are working this whole black market thing along with Lucky Luciano. Um, so you get all of this criminality going on, and in the middle of that, you're going to set um, The mafia controlled all of the Italian ports. Helliwell's plan for the funding of the post-war intelligence agency, a plan which relied on Luciano's network of narcotic distribution within the streets of America. Secretary of Navy James Forrestal, OSS officials Alan Dulles and Murray Murphy, and Lieutenant Commander Hafferden applied pressure on the New York governor to set Luciano free. And then, ironically, after 3 years of James Forrester being in all of these planning meetings to have all of this happening, he mysteriously gets thrown out of the sixth floor window at Bethesda after they committed him saying he was insane. I'm sure that's just a coincidence too.
Wow.
So we have Genevieve going back and forth between the US and Italy, getting all of these plans set up. And one of the people in the harbor that was a key witness to one of the crimes that the mafia was involved with in New York at the time, he was found dead after he was given medicine for quote unquote gallstones, but in his autopsy, they found out he had enough poison to kill 8 horses. Another guy who was a witness to them trying to set all this stuff up was found dead, shot to death on a road in New Jersey. And basically, all of the charges were eventually dropped of all the people so they could continue with this whole operation. Because you just kill as many people as you need to, because we're fighting the communists because they're not godly. So, I mean, literally, that's what's happening. So we get to all of these different people, they name them that were in the mafia, Santo Trafficante, who his name comes up in the JFK murder, the heirs to the Al Capone network in Chicago are all in on this. So they all get together and have a meeting in Havana, Cuba, because of course they do. And they're basically quoted using the N word in what they're going to be doing in killing people in America with the heroin at the meeting in Havana. So then in 45, Truman actually abolishes the OSS and creates what eventually becomes the CIA. There was an intervening thing called the Central Intelligence Group. But you've got General Vandenberg, who was the director of the Central Intelligence Group, who he's the one that recruited Alan Dulles to be in charge of the CIA. And that just boggles my mind that you've got Wild Bill Donovan, who's a 2-star general, and you've got General Vandenberg, who, for people in the Air Force is just like a hero. And he's the one that puts Alan Dulles, who's a known criminal, recommends he be in charge of the CIA. Yeah, I don't know if he was blackmailed and did it. I don't know. It's just mind-boggling to me. Then you have the actual National Security Act, which stood up the Air Force and the CIA. That just boggles my mind too. That then now they have their own charter. They don't have the funding though, so of course we still have to go sell drugs. President Truman authorized Dulles to supervise the organization. And then immediately Dulles goes around recruiting all of the millionaire businessmen that he knew on Wall Street and the Ivy League schools, Desmond Fitzgerald, Tracy Barnes, Corcoran, Richard Bissell, who's a Wall Street lawyer, William F. Buckley, Philip Graham, who owned the Washington Post, William Colby, who was from Princeton and Columbia, Richard Mellon, Scoffy, who was the Mellon oil banking aluminum heir, Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter, who was ONI at the time, Office of Naval Intelligence. He eventually becomes the executive director of the CIA. damn these military people. What is wrong with them? So former OSS official, Wall Street lawyer Frank Wisner, who he's in it big time, appointed head of covert operations. And then, of course, we have Colonel Paul Helliwell. And then we get into the actual workings of the plan in 1947. They've got all of the stuff in place. They've got Meyer Lansky in the US, they've got Lucky Luciano in Italy. They're working through the General Development Corporation as a shell company in Miami to do all the narcotics import and the money going to the shell bank in the Bahamas. So they've got everything set up. The 200-kilo heroin for the test run would come from one of Italy's most experienced pharmaceutical companies. The product was shipped in by the Sicilian mob in crates of oranges. Half of the oranges were waxed oranges stuffed with grams of pure heroin, not 2 or 3% heroin, pure heroin. Additional heroin would be packed in cans of sardines, cheese, barrels of olive oil. The drugs would arrive in Cuba. They would be cut in laboratories there by the Trafficani plan, which operated right here out of Tampa. The drugs would then be shipped to New York for distribution to the jazz clubs. Operation X got underway at the close of the year, and the future of the Gladio and covert operations was no longer in jeopardy. The jazz clubs were the perfect spot to peddle heroin. Soon, some of the country's leading Black musicians, Billie Holiday, Fats Navarro, Charlie Parker, became hopeless junkies, some of whom would die from overdoses. Regarding this development, Harry Anslinger, then head of the Bureau of Narcotics, said, "Jazz entertainers are neither fish nor fowl. They do not get the $1 million protection Hollywood and Broadway can afford for their stars who have become addicts. And there are many more that will be revealed as having been addicts. Perhaps this is because jazz, once considered a decadent form of music, has only token respectability." And then he goes on and says some other stuff. But people recognized at the time, even in the government, what was going on. They knew what was going on. Colonel Albert Carone was a New York City policeman who served as the new drug network bagman for the CIA. He was the one that paid officers to look the other way as they invaded the Black community in Harlem to distribute the drugs. A man made with the Genevieve crime family, Carone also collected money for drug payments and later for money to be laundered by the Vatican from mafia families in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. He was awarded the Grand Knight of the Sovereign Military of Malta from the military arm of the Holy See for his role in this drug trade. He was active in it from 1947 to 1967. And it said the heroin addicts rose in the United States from 20,000 to 150,000 during that time. So, meanwhile, Admiral Hillennotter insisted that the archivists at the Office of Naval Intelligence collect and burn all records concerning Lucky Luciano in terms of his parole deal, the ONI agents that insisted that Lucky Luciano, many people don't know that during World War II, they staged an event in the harbor of New York that basically allowed the naval intelligence to work with the gang, the mobsters there to protect the harbor. And so basically what it's saying here is that they went back and burned all those records so that there's no record of them ever having talked to Lucky Luciano. So they know what they were doing was wrong because they're burning all the evidence of what they did.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1954, the New York Commissioner of Investigations launched a probe into the matter, and he was told that the ONI and the CIA would consent to cooperate under three conditions. No classified information would be turned over. The ONI and CIA officials could monitor all interviews with former agents, and the final report could not be published. So why do the investigation? Um, so then it goes on to make the case of why the people in Italy was so concerned about the communist menace. And basically, what it says in short is that there were from people there's such a fine line between totalitarianism of Mussolini and communism, with it being a controlled government, that there were people that remained in Italy that you could say were sympathizers, but it was not grossly out of whack. There wasn't a huge amount of them, but the media made argument after argument after argument that if we didn't do something to fight against the communists, that they were just going to take over Italy. Um, and so, in one point in 1946, it talks about they were advertising that all the people up north want a communist republic, and all the people in the south want a capitalist monarchy. So I don't know which one of those would be better, but whatever. Neither one of them is democracy, which is what they're always claiming that they're fighting for.
Right.
So um, they make the case that there was activity, and they were going to use that activity to then start launching operations under the auspices of Operation Gladio. And like I said, they will initially start in Italy, and then it will expand worldwide. So the last part for tonight is um, the CIA director, according to the CIA director, Frank Wisner, um, what would include a catch-all phrase in the 1947 National Security Act that granted the CIA the right to engage in functions related to intelligence affecting national security. So, of course, everything is going to be in the best interest of the U.S.'s national security to defeat this minor pocket of communism in Italy. And we're going to sacrifice the Black community in Harlem to do it, just so
Yep.
that everybody can stay on the same sheet of music here.
Mhm.
Of course, the money for the muscle could not be paid to Lucky and Don Carlo, who was another one of the mobsters. It had to be channeled through the financial firm that would not be subject to scrutiny by U.S. Treasury agents, Italian bank examiners, or the international fiscal monitors. There is only one institution that had such immunity, and that was located in Vatican City. And that's where we will pick up next time in chapter 3, the role that the Vatican Bank, um, which could have been completely unknown to the Pope, but the Vatican Bank and some key players in that inner circle will interact with all of these players to launder some of the money initially into the Castle Bank out of Italy. So we'll get to that next time. Does anybody have anything? Did you want to say anything? What's your thoughts?
Are you talking to me now?
I am.
Okay, I didn't know. Well, it's you did a great job, by the way, in making that all very understandable. I guess it's just like you said, it's just the same old playbook. It's just about drugs and money and killing people. I mean, and these few that think that they're smart enough to rule the world. You know,
Yeah.
nothing new under the sun.
Nothing new under the sun. And I think that's where we're going to but while we say that, we don't have so if you say today that that's what they're doing, they call you a conspiracy theorist. But if you can say in trying to talk to someone new that's not awake, it's not the first time they've done it. I'm not crazy.
Right.
Here's a situation. Here's another situation. And have you ever heard of Operation Gladio? Do you know what they did? Do you know they drugged all of the black jazz singers and got them hooked on crack so that they could, make money to supposedly fight communism in a foreign country that had nothing to do with us? Why would you sacrifice your own citizens to do something that isn't even a thing? So that's the part that I keep struggling with is that to me, there's no justification to offer up US citizens as guinea pigs.
Mm-mm.
I don't care if the Satan was spotted walking down the main avenue in Rome. You would not sacrifice or target for sacrifice a minority population. And these are the exact same people that today are insisting that they are not the racist.
Mm-hmm. Not only that,
So
think about it's a generational thing that they've created with this group of people, with this particular race of people. Because think about it,
right.
that they knowingly or maybe didn't know that they were going to create this, but it has become a generational problem. You know,
Well,
it is.
no, they knew because, like I said, I mean, when you do the research, this was already going on. England had been shipping opium out of um, into China and selling it to Chinese for decades by the time they targeted the black population. They knew exactly what
Yeah,
was
they
gonna
knew.
happen.
They knew. That's right.
Yeah, and
Knowingly.
so go ahead.
No, I was saying knowingly. There's our word. You know.
Yes, knowingly. So that's what I hope we can accomplish is giving people some facts that when they are talking with people and they go, "Well, why would somebody do that?" And they can immediately say, "Well, it isn't the first time. Here, let me tell
Yeah.
you about this one, and let me tell you about that one." And then when they start adding up, they're gonna go, "Well, holy crap, that is what's going on."
Yeah.
So, that's our hope.
That's right. You can't deny a pattern.
You can't deny, "Oh, I like that." You can't deny a pattern. You can deny an incident, but you can't deny a pattern. I like that.
Good. Yay.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna use that. You can't deny a pattern. That's so true.
Yeah. Evidence doesn't lie. Same with
Okay.
serial cheaters, serial anything. You know, there's patterns with
No,
these.
you're right. That's exactly right. Very good. And that's a good, comment to probably wrap this up for tonight, and, appreciate everybody that showed up for our very first, um podcast, and thank you, Fada, for, being my partner.
I
Appreciate it.
appreciate the invitation anytime. I will be happy to sit in and listen. You're
No
amazing.
problem. Alright, awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Have a good night.
You too. Let's see. Now I gotta figure out how to shut it off.